Okay, we want to determine if the figures are congruent, and then if they are congruent, what translation would make it so that they are right on top of each other. So if I look at A and B, remember congruent means the same shape, which they are, so yes. If we look, we could take figure A, and if we just moved it to the right 7 units, it goes right on top of figure B, so that's when we say is translating it 7 units to the right. Then if I'm looking at C and D, if I can see that they're the same shape, so yes. However, I can see that the pointy part is not facing the same direction. So because of that, I know it's for sure not a translation. I just can't slide to the right, left, up, or down to make them match. If I look at reflecting, if I have my figure C right here, if I go over the x-axis right here, that means that my shape is upside down in this quadrant right here, which that doesn't work, so I know it's not this one. Then if I look at the y-axis, that means that I'd have the long edge over here and it would reflect and look something like that, which is not what figure D is, so I know that one's not going to work. Then the last ones I've got are rotations. So if I'm thinking about rotations, it first says clockwise 180 degrees about the origin. Well, 180 degrees would mean I'd go once, twice, and it'd be over here in this quadrant. That's not going to work, so I'm going to pick something else. However, if I go counterclockwise 90 degrees, that means that my long edge would be here, and I'd have something that looks something like this. So yes, we can do that one, and we can check that. All right, doing this again, if I look at figure A and figure B, yes, they're congruent. Again, they're not the same direction, so I know it's not a translation. If I think about a reflection, honestly, neither reflection is going to work. If I go over the y-axis, it means I end up in this quadrant. If I go over the x-axis, that means the point's going down and it looks something like this, so I know that's not the case. So then I want to look at my rotations. If I start with figure A down here and I rotate it 180 degrees around the origin clockwise, that means I'd go here and then here in this quadrant, which is not where figure B is, so I know that's not going to work. And then my last one, I would go counterclockwise 90 degrees about the origin, which means I would go from here to here, and it would go something like this, which in fact does match. So I'd say, you know what? I can rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise, okay? And then if I look at C and D, those are congruent. Again, the shapes are not facing the same direction, so I know that it can't be a translation. If I look at figure C right here, and I look at figure D, if I were to reflect it over this y-axis, I'd see that, in fact, that reflection does match. So I can say, yes, that's a reflection over the y-axis. All right, and doing this one last time, we can see that B and A are congruent, so I'm going to pick yes. If I were looking to go from A to B, again, they're facing different directions, so I know it's not a translation. However, if I reflect it just like I did the last guy over the y-axis, I'd see the short guy stays in the middle, long one goes on the edge, which is what B does. So I'm going to reflect over the y-axis. D and C are indeed congruent, so we're going to say congruent. The nice thing is both shapes are facing the same direction, so this means I can just do a translation. So if I take figure C and if I move it to the left 7 units, I see it does in fact go onto D, so we can click that as a translation. And that's how you can figure if they're congruent and if we can make a translation so they're on top of each other.